Now, conversation with the candidate continues.
All right, thanks for clicking on our extended digital conversation with the candidate. Our guest this evening, Republican Donald Trump. And the next 30 minutes is all commercial free, so we can get to as many questions as possible. So let's stop wasting time and get started. Leonard, go ahead.
First of all, thank you for coming to New Hampshire. Thank you. I'm a big constitutionalist, and you touched on it earlier. My question to you would be, would you use your executive powers when you couldn't work with Congress, even though sometimes it gets borderline illegal?
Well, I wouldn't do it. I mean, you got to get along with people. You got to get the Democrats, you got to get the Republicans, you got to get them in. I mean, the one good thing about the executive power that Obama signed, if the Republican gets in, you can sign that out with an executive power. I don't know if you know that or not. That's the one good thing. You don't have to go through all sorts of, votes and everything else. You can wipe out his executive power. It would be probably the first thing I'd do. Second thing I'd do is repeal Obamacare, and I'd strengthen up the military and help the vets. Beyond belief, I would help the vets. You would have your own center in New Hampshire. I guarantee you that, because they should have. This is a big vet area, and you don't even have your own center. But I would absolutely, one of the first thing, if not the first thing, I would sign out the executive order that he did. And all they need is my signature. And I think that's a great question.
All right, well, here's another one, sir, then, that follows up on the question about executive powers to a certain degree. It comes from Charles Polito. Charles, good to see you.
Mr. Trump, I fully agree with your policies on Mexico and China and foreign trade in general. I'm wondering how you figure to get Congress to agree with your policies. And on a personal note, I hope you're in it to win it.
Thank you very much. Well, let me tell you something. I'm here. I give up a lot. You heard where I'm not doing The Apprentice. People would say, oh, that's a tremendously successful show, pays me a lot of money, regardless of how rich you are, it's a lot. But more importantly, I give up real estate projects all over the world that I would be doing instead. When you're a politician, you run for office. That's all they do, is they run for office. They run, they debate, they run, they debate, they win some, they lose some. I mean, you have guys, they lose. You have a few candidates running who lost elections. Now they're running for president, okay? And people say, oh, aren't they wonderful? I mean, how do you run for office when you lose an election, at a smaller level? With me, I give up a lot. I give up tremendous, forget the money. I give up tremendous amounts of money, but I love what I do also. So if I run, and I just formed an exploratory committee. I have a whole great group up in New Hampshire. You know Corey, and you know so many of the other people involved, Josh. But if I run, and if I win, this country will be great again. That I can tell you.
Well, that's it we're looking for.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Quick follow-up on that, sir. Obviously, you talk about the things you would give up. You would also be under a tremendous amount of personal scrutiny. You've been in a business that includes casino gambling, real estate, kind of rough and tumble. And everybody kind of has something that's going to be examined and brought up. Is there anything, are you squeaky clean?
Probably, I guess, probably. Look, here's the thing. So when you're really, really successful, I'm really, really successful. If you remember the last time I was thinking about running, before I had sort of hoped Mitt would do a better job, to be honest, I actually filed my financial. People would say, oh, is he that rich? I don't know if he's that rich, but they knew that because I'm a private person. It's funny. You remember, I filed financials. I'm the only person in the history of government, I think, running for office that filed financials and wasn't running for office. But I filed them early. And it showed a tremendous net worth, tremendous cash, tremendous assets. I built a great company. That's what this country needs. It needs that kind of mentality. With that being said, and I've always said it, and it's been said, it's very hard for a person of great success. I do a deal a week. And I crush people. I beat people. It's my business. I have to. You want me to beat people, right? You don't want somebody that lost a lot of money in, Carly got thrown out of Hewlett-Packard. It's okay. But now she's running for president. She lost an election in a landslide. She got thrown out, really rough, out of Hewlett-Packard, thrown out. Now she's running for office. I think that's fine. Everybody has a right to run. I've had tremendous victories. I've made a fortune. I've made a fortune off the Chinese. The biggest developers in China, I made a fortune off them. I beat them so badly. I was very proud of it. And you'll see that when assuming I file, and I file my statements, you're going to see some unbelievable numbers. And a lot of it was made against China, which I like. That's the kind of mentality you need to be president, because we need that. Otherwise, we're going to be bust. This country is going down. The whole country is going to be Detroit, okay? That's a nasty thing to say, and it's true. Our country is going to be Detroit if you don't get the right president. And if you get one of these politicians, you put a Jeb Bush back, or you put somebody else, I'm not going to go into names, but virtually anybody, this country is going the way of Detroit. Just remember it. So with that being said, look, just to finish, it's very hard for a person of great success who's done many, many deals. I have a lot of enemies because I won. I won almost all the time. And if I didn't win, I ultimately won. In other words, I take something where the market crashed, and I'd still make it a good deal. That's what I do. This country has tremendous potential. If you have the right leader, this country is going to go to new heights like it's never risen before, higher and better than it's ever been before. But if you go into the politician stuff, this country doesn't have a chance.
All right. Thank you, sir. Okay. Moving right along now, let's go to another question from our audience coming from Robert Lister.
Welcome to New Hampshire, Mr. Trump.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here. When I was superintendent of schools, I moved to full-day kindergarten. Now, 6 years later, we've monitored those students, and their good progress has been well documented. To me, it was a no-brainer. How will you, as president, make sure that public schools can offer full-day kindergarten in good preschool programs?
Well, look, preschool is very important, and schools are very important. Just schools, all schools are very important. But part of it has to start with the fact that you have to spend the money that's being wasted on bureaucrats in Washington and bring it down to a local level, so that you have plenty of money in New Hampshire and in other places to take care of kids, whether it's preschool or kindergarten or anything else. You want to do that on a local basis, you're much better than some person sitting in Washington telling you what they want to learn in New Hampshire. That, in many cases, they're not even smart people. They're just there to collect a paycheck. So I would take the money that's being wasted in Washington, which is tens of billions of dollars, and I'd put it to the local school systems. And you'd have plenty of money for what you're talking about. And there'll be money left over.
Thank you for the question, sir. Let's go back to the audience now. Richard Bruno has the next one. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Trump. Thanks for taking my question.
Thank you.
There's a lot of, I think there's sentiment building towards campaign finance reform and term limitations. I'd like to get your position with regard to those subjects and how it would affect politics. You've touched on it a couple of times where money might affect judgment.
It's a very interesting question, and it's a very complicated question, because you can say that term limit should be you do a bad job, you get voted out of office. And over the years, I've seen term limits. In New York City, they did certain areas of term limits, and in some cases they were bad, and in some cases you got rid of some very bad people. But I've also seen some unbelievably talented people get term limited where they couldn't run anymore, and they were replaced by somebody that was a basic novice that didn't know what they were doing. I'm fine with term limits. I mean, I can live with them, I can live without them, but I'm fine with term limits. I think they have a lot of value, frankly, but I also have seen some very good people get term limited out of office. As far as campaign contributions and campaign financing, I think the primary thing is people should know who's contributing. I think it should be an open book. If I want to make a contribution to people, I think everybody should know that Trump is giving to that person. I think the limits maybe should be taken up, or certainly they should be expanded. On a federal basis, they're very low. I'll oftentimes, Josh, I'll have senators, a United States senator, come to my office from Washington, sit down in my office in order to get a $2,000 contribution, you know, the maximum contribution. I'll say, boy, that's a lot of work. I mean, they're coming all the way up to my office. Now, that limit was set many years ago. But they come all in one, you know, in one way I love it, because I give $2,000. I've given the max. And by the way, if I gave him $200,000, he appreciates it just as much. Okay? So I sort of like it. But I will say this. Our politicians spend an awful lot of time raising money. And I see them. They're constantly calling. And I just say, leave me alone. I'll send you the money. Just leave me alone. They spend most of their time raising money. You know, these guys that run for Congress, they run, and the day after they get elected, they start running again, and their form of running is just to raise money. They don't have any time to run the country. So I think something could be done, absolutely.
So it's fair to ask you, sir, if you decide to run and you win, term limited to 8 years, what do you think, how long would it take you to turn around the country, or, you know, to achieve the goals that you say that you want to achieve?
To make the country great again? I think I could do it in 2 years. I think I could do it very quickly. I'd tell China, hey, folks, listen, You're not going to lower your currency. You're not going to manipulate your currency. You know, they're doing a big manipulation right now. They're lowering it big league right now because we are in such turmoil between Israel and all the problems we have and ISIS and everything. Think of ISIS. What's China doing about ISIS? They do nothing. Do you know, in Afghanistan, people don't realize this, Afghanistan has tremendous mineral wealth. Everyone felt, oh, Afghanistan doesn't have wealth. They don't. They have minerals. We fight in Afghanistan, and on the other side of the mountain, China has these massive excavators taking out all the minerals out of Afghanistan. So we're fighting over there. China's over here. They don't spend 10 cents on fighting. And look, I have many friends in China. I do business with China. I make a lot of money with China. I do great with China. They consider me to be a very smart person. I will tell you, they can't believe what they get away with. They tell me, look, and I don't hold it against China. I think China's fine. I just say their leaders are much smarter than ours. So they're lowering their currency now. You've probably been, they're manipulating their currency, but they're lowering their currency. Now what's going to happen is all the jobs that they don't have. When my friend, who's a big Caterpillar fan, ends up buying Komatsus from Japan, because their currency now is so low, they've cut it so low, that he can't buy the Caterpillars, you're going to see some real turmoil in this country, and it's going to affect New Hampshire very badly. And the problem we have is we have politicians that aren't smart enough to know the difference, or they don't have any business ability, or they have no business instinct, or something. Or, frankly, the people that want this to happen, like the lobbyists, are telling them, be quiet, okay? Because these countries are getting away with murder, and it's going to, you watch what happens over the next few years with this country. We are in big trouble. And China's doing a manipulation like they've never done before, and I never thought they could be, I never thought they'd have the guts to do it, but now they're doing it because they are the least of our problems. But it's going to be one of our big problems.
All right, sir, let's keep going. Another question coming from our audience. This one is from Celissa Hoyt. Good to see you.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for your comments about preschool.
Thank you.
One of our beloved senators, Warren Rudman, from New Hampshire, was known for championing fiscal responsibility and for working effectively in a bipartisan way.
Right.
At an early childhood conference in New Hampshire, he said, investing in our youngest children is the best bang for your buck. Can you talk to us about how you, if elected president, would reach across the aisle and champion this important work?
Well, first of all, I agree with that. There's nothing like starting young. They talk about experience, but getting that education and that young upbringing is so important. So I would agree. And again, it also gets back to the education, and I would funnel tremendous amounts of money that's being wasted. And you know what? You'd have money left over. But money that's being wasted in Washington because we have to take care, not only in terms of education, in terms of health and health care, we have to take care of our young. It's what it's all about. It's our children. It's our future. So we have to take care of our young. So I would agree with that 100%.
All right, thank you very much, Celissa, with the question. Let's change things
Very
up a
well
little bit.
delivered question, too. I'll tell you, that was
Indeed.
very
Fantastic.
impressive. Good, thank you.
One of the debates in this campaign season is about climate change. Right. A, do you think it should be a major issue in this race? And B, do you think that man has something to do with it and should deal with it?
Well, look, this has been a big thing of mine, and I have millions of people on @RealDonaldTrump. And it's amazing to me. You tell the people of Boston and you tell the people of New Hampshire about climate change. Now, the word climate change used to be, as you know, global warming. That wasn't working so well. When the ship went over to study why all of the ice was melting, and then all of a sudden they had a real cold wave, and the ship ends up getting encapsulated in the ice. And these were scientists, and it was an amazing thing. Then they said they were tourists. You know, they didn't like the idea of the scientists. Look, I think there's a climate change. I think it goes for many, many millions of years. You know, in the 1920s, they used to talk about a thing called global cooling. They thought it was cooling. Now they think it's warming. Now they're saying, well, maybe it's not warming because this has been a disaster. And this is not just in a small area. This has been, so now they call it climate change. And now they're calling it, that's not working that well either because people got wise to it. So now they call it extreme weather. I noticed they're using the word extreme weather. I think you're always going to, it's called weather. It's called weather. And, you know, as big as your snowstorm was, like up in Boston where they had record, and they keep the records very accurately, and your records are kept in New Hampshire very accurately, the biggest snowstorm was in the 1890s. That still has the record. So I just think we have much bigger problems.
So you're not buying the science behind
My
it.
uncle was a professor at MIT, very smart guy. I have an ability for this stuff, you know, if you believe in that kind of thing. I think we have far bigger problems than climate change. And I'm not a big believer in man-made. Now, I do believe in clean air, because I've been to some countries, including China, where the air is very dirty. But it's very bad. And I'm a big believer in clean air and things like that. But the climate change is, you know, we're spending all of this money. We're becoming non-competitive in our factories because we're focusing on climate change when other countries aren't, and it's making our product much more expensive and really is hurting us very badly. So I think the biggest climate change and the biggest thing, if you're talking about global warming, that we have to be careful of is nuclear global warming. That's what global warming is all about. It's not about global warming, it's about nuclear, because if we're not smart and if we're not tough, you're going to have nuclear weapons. And once you have nuclear weapons in the wrong hands, you're talking about a whole new ball game, folks. And I saw the other day where Obama said the biggest problem this country has is climate change. I said, did he really say that? Was he saying that as a joke, or is he serious with what's going on in the world right now? So the big problem we have, one of the many big problems, but the biggest problem we have right now is nuclear weapons in the hands of the wrong people. That's going to be called global warming, and we better be careful, very careful.
All right, sir. Let's go back to our audience question now, coming from Bob Van Nostrand. Bob, what's your question?
Morning, Mr. Trump.
How are you?
My question's about Federal Reserve. What, if any, changes will you make to Federal Reserve? And two, do you think they should be audited on a regular basis?
Audited, absolutely. As far as Federal Reserve is concerned, I really think that you can have it, you can not have it. A lot of people like it. A lot of conservative people like it. They think that there's a certain adjustment that they make with interest rates and other things. I'm not a fan. I'm not a big fan. Audit 100%. But I like free economy. I like having a great and free economy. And they do a lot of adjustment to the economy. In some cases, perhaps it's good, perhaps it's not. The truth is nobody really knows, and nobody really has an idea. And we have some very conservative Republicans that like the Federal Reserve, and we have some that think it should be totally disbanded. I have no opinion yet. I have not really formed that opinion.
Can you envision a scenario that this country ever goes back to the gold standard?
Well, in some ways, I like the gold standard. There's something very nice about the gold standard, and you have to go back at the right time, like when gold does the old crash show. But there's something very nice about having something solid. You know, we used to have a very, very solid country because it was based on a gold standard. We don't have that anymore. There is something very nice about the concept of that. It would be very, very hard to do at this point, and one of the problems is we don't have the gold. Other places have the gold. Other places have other things. You know, you go to Saudi Arabia, you go to Qatar, you go to some of these places, Dubai. I was in Dubai recently. They have airports, the likes of which you've never... Have you ever seen airports? I mean, you fly into LaGuardia, it's like a third world country. Kennedy Airport, LAX in Los Angeles. These are third world airports. They have potholes on the runway. You know, they fill their floors inside, the terrazzo floors, old terrazzo floors. They have holes in them. You know what they use to fill them? Asphalt. Asphalt from outside. They put big black asphalt patches all over the place. You go to a place like Dubai, you've never seen anything like it. It's the most unbelievable thing. They do it with our money. They do it with our money. Now, we protect so many countries. We make it possible. Saudi Arabia. If we didn't protect Saudi Arabia, they'd be gone. If we announced that we're not going to protect Saudi Arabia, they'd be gone by this afternoon. Their people don't fight. Every time there's a fight, they leave. Remember, there was a skirmish, and they had the Saudi soldiers. And the skirmish started. The Saudi soldiers ran back. They ran. They dropped their rifles. Our Marines in the back. Bing, bing, bing. That's the end of that. Okay, you know, our Marines did a great job. They make $1 billion a day, Saudi Arabia. $1 billion a day. A little bit less now because of oil prices. But they make $1 billion a day. They give us nothing. They give us nothing. They should contribute to us, folks. Believe me, they should contribute to us. They wouldn't be there for 24 hours if we didn't protect them. And there are many other countries like that. We protect South Korea. I just ordered 5,000 television sets. The only place you can buy them is from South Korea, okay? Whether it's LG, I mean Samsung, all of them. It's made in South Korea. I'd love to buy them if they were made in New Hampshire. Unfortunately, you don't have a plant. Now, we protect them, and they kill us economically. We have thousands and thousands of soldiers sitting between North and South Korea. We get nothing. We get nothing. Why aren't we getting something? Now, somebody would say, oh, that's very nasty. I actually had this. A person said, that's very rude. You're asking a sovereign country. Well, hey, what are we doing? What are we doing it for? We're protecting them, and we get nothing. Now, if somebody with the right mind, and none of you politicians are going to think this way, believe me. They don't have it. They don't have it. And I told you, all my life I've dealt with them, they don't have it. We could make this country so powerful and so rich again. Now, the word rich sounds terrible, but rich is going to solve Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, health care. All of your problems are solved with rich. We've got to make it rich again. We owe now $18 trillion. It's going up rapidly. Soon it's going to be $21 trillion. That's a very important number. And 24 is a killer. So we're going to be up to 24 trillion. Josh, when we get to 24 trillion, it's almost like there's no return. Can't do it, but we're going there very rapidly. This country can be so great, but you need the right leader.
All right, sir, let's go back to our audience. Heather Carroll with the next question. We have less than 10 minutes to go.
Hi. Alzheimer's disease is the most expensive disease process in this country, with costs that are going to skyrocket very soon. If elected, where do you stand on increasing research money and funding to find a cure?
100%. It's so important, that and others. But that is, it's an unbelievably harsh disease for families. Actually, the person with the Alzheimer's is you know, because I know, because we've had it in the family, and I've had so many friends where, and I've seen it recently, a friend of mine is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It's a horrible thing, and I am all for. That's the kind of thing, that's why I want to take the money away from people that don't deserve it and bring it into places like that, okay? Look at the children, what's happening with children, where so many different problems with children that can be solved, problems that can be solved. But this country, I mean, we keep cutting back on those things. No, Alzheimer's is something very close to my heart, and I would be 100%. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Heather, for the question. Let's go back to social media now. This one coming from Facebook. Jennifer Silk writes, what is your stance on raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour?
Well, my stance is very simple. I would do something else. I would make the country so great that people aren't going to be getting minimum wage. You'll have better jobs than that. I want to keep us competitive. So I'm not looking to raise things. I want to keep us competitive. But I want where the minimum wage is not gotten by people, because I think this country could be so successful that people aren't going to be getting the minimum wage anymore. At the same time, though, Josh, I do want to keep the country competitive. We're right now non-competitive with all of our environmental nonsense. I'll give you an example, terrible thing, and it's a lot of people don't like to. I build hotels. I just built Doral, one of the great resorts of the world. I bought it. It was a sick puppy. Now it's one of the great resorts of the world, which is what could happen with the United States. I think the United States could be easier. And we buy sinks. And the sinks throw out very little water. So what do people do? They let the sink run twice as long. Showers. I replaced the shower heads because they have government restrictions. Toilets. You flush them, no water comes out. So you flush them again. So you flush them 10 times. They're not saving. These are disasters. And it's really terrible. So what you do is you make adjustments. But the government, what they're doing, these are just things. I mean, do you ever go into a shower in a brand new place and there's no water coming out? They think they're saving. So you end up staying in the shower 4 times longer. They're not saving anything. These are restrictions I would take off, absolutely, and just absolutely get rid of. So many restrictions in this country that are hurting businesses. And I use those as examples because I'm in the real estate business, but there are many more in many other ways. Yes.
Would you like me to call on?
Go ahead.
Ken Merrifield from Franklin. Go ahead.
Hi, Ken. Mr. Trump, good to see you.
Thank you.
If you're chosen as the next president, a child born on your inauguration day will graduate from high school presumably in 2035, will retire from the workforce probably in the 2080s, And I wonder if you could tell us what policies or programs you would put into place as president to ensure that that child can compete in a really complex global marketplace.
Right now we can't compete. Right now we don't have the jobs. We don't have the technology. All the technological jobs are in Asia. We're not doing them. I would very early on have meetings with Apple and companies like Apple and give them tremendous incentives to build plants in this country. You could build a plant in New Hampshire. I guarantee you could do just as good a job. So I order furniture from China. I order a lot of things from China because it doesn't make I'm a business person. It doesn't make economic sense to do it the other way. I will tell you that the furniture made in this country is far better. North Carolina, South Carolina, areas in there, they make incredible furniture. It's much better. The problem is it's so non-competitive price-wise. I order it anyway in many cases, but it's so non-competitive. But it's a better product. You take a place like New Hampshire, you could have those big factories that are in China making Apple. You have the population. You would be able to knock them dead. You'd make those computers and you'd make those iPhones. You'd make them better than they make in China. And but then Apple would really be an American company as opposed to a faux American company, which is really what it is. We have to bring back jobs. If we don't bring back jobs, what's the future for the kids? Where are they going to go? Where are they going to work? Where are they going to work? And I'll go a step further. When they get to retirement age, they're not going to have Social Security. They're not going to have Medicare, Medicaid. We don't have any money. We're bust. This country is bust. We have a president that's incompetent. We have a president who doesn't know what he's doing. And the country is totally bust. And we make all bad deals. Remember this. We haven't made a good deal in years. And nobody in this audience can sit there and say, oh, yeah, but we did good here. We don't do good. Brazil kills us in trade negotiations. Mexico, Japan, China. And we have all the power. Because if we start playing games with their product, pouring into, like, we're going to give you a little tax, folks, they will behave very, very nicely, believe me. But somebody has to say it that knows how to say it and that knows what he or she is doing. In this case, he. Okay.
Thank you for the question, Ken. We're under 3 minutes, sir. You've railed on the Affordable Care Act, as have a lot of Republicans. But one question a lot of Democrats are asking and voters are asking, you get rid of it, what do you replace it with?
Well, you have a lot of choices. Look, people had a good plan. Many of the people in this room had a good plan. And I'm all for getting coverage for everybody. Let's get it for everybody. But, you know, it was a phony plan because if you were in New York, I couldn't go outside the borders. I have a big company. I have thousands of people. If I want to buy in New York medical, I couldn't go to New Jersey, to California, to New Hampshire, if there was a good company, to get my health care taken care of. I was confined to essentially one company. And the reason is politics, because the politicians get a lot of money from the lobbyists who represent these companies, and they don't want competition. If you just took down the border problem, you would have so much competition. And the one thing I'd do, the only thing I'd regulate is every company that competes for this has to be very strong financially. Because you don't want to be paying a lot of money and then when you need it, they're bust. So the only thing I'd do, because sometimes, you know, government can be a good thing. But the one thing I'd do, big league, is I'd make sure that anybody that wants to compete for your insurance has to be very strong financially. Not that all of a sudden they have a run and they can't afford. You would have great coverage at far less money than you used to pay before Obamacare, because Obamacare is a disaster. The deductibles in Obamacare are so high that unless you get hit with an army tank, you're not going to be using them. You have no insurance. So the deductibles are a total catastrophe for people. But if you got rid of those borders and if you let companies compete, you would bring down the cost, and then we would also find a way through the hospital systems to take care of people that were unable to take care of themselves. Because whether you like it or not, we have to do that.
Just about out of time. What's the likelihood, probably some voters want to know, that you actually run for president?
I think it's very good. I want to see this country be great again. Our country is in big, big trouble. It's going to hell. I think it's very good, and we can make this country greater than it ever was.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. And thank you all for joining us here on the website and our mobile app for the extended portion of this program. Of course, thank you very much to Donald Trump for being here. Thank you to the audience for participating.
Thank you very much.
And everyone, have a great night.